Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Happy New Year. Good to be back. 2019, can you believe it? Wow. I was just talking with Jonathan. I keep forgetting how long we've been doing this, but it was 8 years ago that Jonathan and I went to the Chancellor and told him about this crazy idea, and he liked it, and so we're in the middle of our 7th year already, which is absolutely amazing. Yeah. So welcome back to another action-packed, fun-filled, exciting event. Speaker today, and I'm John Stupar. I'm on the organizing committee. And now about our program. As faculty and staff and students, we spend much of our time dealing with teaching and learning and doing coursework and research, lecturing, working on budgets and personnel matters and many other things that support and serve our university. And this What Matters to Me and Why program is a unique chance to take about an hour each month to stop and take a bit of a break from our usual activities, just to have the opportunity to hear from someone who shapes UCI through his or her daily activities, and who gives us a short informal talk followed by a Q&A session. So there's really no prescribed topic. Speakers are asked to simply answer the question, what matters to you and why does it matter to you? And authentically and frankly, they answer that and they take it wherever it goes. The series provides a forum for speakers to talk about their own personal values, their beliefs and motivations, and perhaps to share how these have shaped their personal experiences, including both the highs and the lows encountered along the way. And the hope, really, in doing all this is to strengthen the bonds between faculty and staff and students, and to help celebrate what we see as diversity. We're all different, and we celebrate this in our community and also our commonalities together. So that's what Matters to Me and Why is all about if it's your first time. By the way, how many of you are here for the first time? Just raise your hand. Wow, look at that. Jonathan, isn't that great? So we still have new people coming. And now, kicking off this year's program is one of my favorite colleagues from our School of Engineering, where I teach, Dabdub. He's a professor of mechanical and aerospace engineering, and he will be introduced by Kim Ayala, who's also a member of our organizing committee. And just to remind you about next month, our speaker will be Dr. Judy Wu, who's the professor and chair of Asian American Studies. And she'll be speaking on Wednesday, February 13th in this room. So make sure when you get the email on it that you sign up. And now, because this series attracts a diverse audience from all over the campus, we like to have a little tradition of giving you just a minute to greet those people around you. Just say, hi, I'm so-and-so, I'm from somewhere here, and we'll give you a minute to do that, and then Kim will come up and introduce. So introduce each other. Here's Kim to introduce our speaker.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Donald Dabdub is the Associate Dean of Undergraduate Education, Professor of Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering, and Professor of Advanced Power and Energy here at UCI. He completed his PhD in Chemical Engineering at California Institute of Technology. Dr. Dabdub's expertise is in mathematical modeling of air pollution dynamics and numerical algorithms using high-performance parallel computation. His main research effort is to develop new physics and chemistry for air quality models, to design new algorithms for the solution of the governing equations of air pollution dynamics, and to study the impact of various energy-related scenarios on urban airsheds. He presented at the Scheisler Distinguished Lecture at Lehigh University. Outside of his academia, Dr. Dabdub has served as advisor to various state and federal agencies, including the Air Resources Board of California, the California Energy Commission, John Wayne Airport, Lake Arrowhead Science Consortium, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, and the U.S. Department of Energy, and is a fellow of the American Association of Aerosol Research. In addition, he has been awarded 3 times the title of Best Engineering Professor at UCI. Recently, he was also the recipient of the Tom Angel Award that recognizes the best mentor at UCI, and he is the best supervisor I could ever want. Dr. Dabdub.
Thanks, everybody. It's a real pleasure to be here sharing some thoughts. Kim, thank you for such kind introduction. We work together as part of the Undeclared, the new name, and to see several friends from the School of Engineering and to see some friends from all levels of campus. So it really starts my 2019 with a bang. Thanks for coming. I think that this is the best instructions that I have had of any seminar or any talk. The title is What Happens to Me and Why, and what matters to me and why, and you can just take it with so many directions. So I am going to, tell you in the next 35 to 40 minutes before we go to the question, some of the things that really matter to me. And if I can answer it in 2 words, this will be the central theme of the talk, but there will be several sub-themes and subplots that are going on. And I got a request to dim the lights, so I can do that a little bit here.
Just a second, because you're getting picked up on 2 mics. So you're getting picked up on the lavalier and on this, so I don't know exactly what to do with this.
Yeah.
Sorry.
All right. Thank you, Kim. And we can move this one out. Yeah. All right. Yes. So this is a list that the National Academy of Engineering puts related to which are the grand challenges that we are going to face as a country and a society. The National Academies was founded by our founding members, Lincoln and whatnot, and there is a beautiful history and some paintings about that, and the National Academy Beckman building over here, and it contains really the brightest mind in the country. So they get together and they decide on which are the greatest problems that we are facing. In black, I have highlighted that those 5 challenges identified by the National Academy, and they are related to energy and the environment. So there is a Chinese saying that my grandma used to share with us, that may you live in interesting times. And these are certainly interesting times in these kinds of problems. So I will start talking a little bit of background about where I come from, and I will tell you the why this is important as we go along, and also share with you some stories with some students that I have had the opportunity to interact with. So I was born in Nicaragua, Dabdub. It's a Middle Eastern last name, and my grandfather was born in the Middle East, and my grandmother was born in China. So they got married and decided to do business in Central America. All the business is the Asian and the Middle Eastern community was basically the traders and whatnot during that area at that time. My town is Masaya. It's not even on the map. It's not even, it's really. And so it's out of Managua. It's known for being a very artsy, very artisanal I should say, town. I will show you some pictures. I tried to pick one of the nicest pictures that I could find in a day that the city is clean. So this is a typical street in the town of Masaya. If you have been, south of the border, it's, sort of similar to some of the other towns. Time magazine called Nicaragua and Haiti the first countries of the fourth world, because the amount of poverty, it's extremely high. And the typical families are rich in love, but they are financially, it's one of the poorest countries that one can visit. It has been influenced by Spanish culture, and there is, of course, the run of the bulls in Pamplona, Spain, and there is also the run of the bulls in Masaya. And they left the wild, and there is always invariably somebody who is really hurt. But that's a different story. So this is not only my world. This is my universe. When I have, that's the only thing that I have seen in my entire life. And, suddenly I am taken from this type of environment to this type of environment. To say that it was a shock, it's an understatement. Many of my classmates at Caltech and whatnot, they have conversations about quantum physics for dinners with their dad, who was a professor. Not I. And so I strongly sympathize with some of the challenges and some of the adaptation and the cultural language, family, personal friends, and that some of our undergrads face. And in fact, one of the things that was an issue as an undergrad, it was like change of majors. I wanted to go to applied mathematics, but that did not appreciate that very well. And there was a really strong conflict, so I ended up majoring in both in 4 years. But that, as soon as I came to UC Irvine as a professor, I worked with the UU office, and now I'm still working with that. And the statistics are that 70% of our students change majors. 30% they change even outside their school. They go from School of Engineering to Social Science to a totally different school, and that's the norm. And helping students that go through that transition, it's certainly one of the very important things that matter to me, because I've been there and navigating that space without some of that support, it's not fun. But somehow I managed to graduate. And this is a picture of me and my mom during graduation time at Lehigh University in 1990, best late 80s, early 90s fashion of the day. And this is a handful of Hispanic students. There were 2 African American students, and maybe at the most 10 Asian students. And Lehigh had accepted women not too long, not too earlier after this one. Very different demographics. And let's contrast that with some of our graduation here at UCI last year. Look at these numbers. 50% of the UCI graduates last year were first-generation students. I could not be more proud of that. Really, that resonates very closely to my heart. After graduating from Lehigh, I went to try to spend 5 years here in California at Caltech, doing a lot of blood, sweat, and tears solving that equation. So this slide summarizes 5 painful years of my life right there on the screen. And how to add more complexity. And when I thought that I was done, my advisor said, no, you're not done. Add more complexity to it. And that was basically how to and I won't go in the details of that, but I would want to share with you what those 5 years meant for me, and it was basically ways to solve that equation that was related to how mathematical modeling of air quality and it's performed in supercomputers. So if we can expand a little bit, some of this interest of what matters to me. Yeah, it's the environment, but given of the academic paradigm that I have experienced, certainly there are some satellites about the Student Success Initiative, about supporting international students, about supporting first-generation students, about supporting students, period, that really resonate strongly with me, because it's the right thing, and it's not only the right thing, but I have seen that very close, and I can state that my life has been profoundly affected in a positive way by the support that I got along the way. As simple as that. So I'm going to start with a story that I share with some of my students to provide a little bit of inspiration as to the why the environment is important to me. And the story involves an anteater, an anteater who was able to go to very exciting places, and that is Tracy Caldwell. And she is on her return from the International Space Station right there. And there, the other job that I have when I'm not associate dean is professor of mechanical engineering. So we get the questions, Professor Dabdub, can I be an astronaut? I cannot tell you how many times. She was able to achieve that. And so she's coming in the Soyuz capsule, and it's landing in Kazakhstan and in a field over there. As you can see, it's quite a jolt when you land. It's not an easy thing, and we have all the press, all the politicians, all the doctors and whatnot. I'm just sharing a lot of pictures, and this is really what it looks like. It is, we have some experts here in the audience about who do re-entry dynamics into the atmosphere. Professor Ken Meese, thank you for being here. And they really understand. I mean, this is like being inside a s'more when you go camping. And you better trust the people who did all the heat transfer, because I mean, it's really toasty and cozy and very, very cozy, to say the least. So there are 2 ways to get into space. One of them is the military, via the how to do the pilot and whatnot. And so you see the Russian cosmonaut here, and who was the pilot. And another way is to be a scientist. And this is Tracy, who is coming out in the other side. And she, they have to be carried back because the muscles in the legs and whatnot are not strong enough. So they put them a little bit in chairs for the welcome reception. But she said, I was dead tired, absolutely so tired, the intense amount of work. So I had to take a little nap, and everybody was texting and whatnot and taking pictures. She was like, I cannot stay. But after a while she recovered a little bit. And she was able to, go back to the ceremonies and a little bit more formal and whatnot over there in Russia, and to tour in Moscow. Here is in Red Square, and over there it's it's Tracy one of our very own UCI anteaters who have been to space, and actually she did carry an anteater to space. You can see the anteater in Roland Hall in room 360, and they are allowed to have 1 cubic foot of personal statement, and it came back certified by NASA that Peter Anteater has been to the International Space Station. It's in public display. Check it out. And yes, so this is her leaving the International Space Station, a picture that she took, and then she came back to say hello to some friends here at Irvine, and that's John Heminger, Vice Chancellor of Research at that time, Professor Barbara Thieleson Pitts, one of my colleagues. I don't know who the other guy is, but this is a great story because Tracy does not have all the degrees from the MITs and the Harvards and things. She is a product of the Cal State system, and she is a product of the UC system. As a female, the odds of making it to this rigorous programs are, astronomically small, and she was a tremendous success. When she came back, I was at that time working with Doug in the Office of Inclusive Excellence, so I went to his assistants. I don't know if you know this story, Doug, but I went to your assistant and got one of these shirts, a very, very, very feminine, that say this is what a scientist looks like, to promote that the face of a woman is a scientist too. And Tracy wore that in a video, that PR video for NASA that has had millions of views on YouTube. So yeah, yeah, that was Doug's idea, which has had a great PR. But at the end of the day, the reason, in addition to all that I like to share this story with you is because it answered the question of why it is that I am, passionate about the environment. And you see it very clearly with some of these pictures that Tracy took. On the upper right, you can see how thin and really how fragile the Earth's atmosphere is. It's really the smallest sliver. It's just a few kilometers thing, compared to the whole radius of the Earth. That's nothing. And here in the lower picture, there is Tracy contemplating the whole planet from the window of the space station. When she came, because we made her a promise that she would come to UCI to give the first lecture, and she said that the first time that she was in space, she looked at the stars, and she said, I could see these stars in 3 dimensions, like I'm seeing you right now. I know that there's some people in front, and there is like a sense of depth. And she said, Donald, I've never been like the most religious person, but at that moment, I just, had a religious experience. I knew that there had, and when she was presenting that here at the Beckman Center, she almost broke down in tears, just telling the story of how few people in the history of the universe have been able to have that view that she was having. And then she said, I look at the other side, and that's where that picture was taken, to look at our planet. And it was so small compared to the immensity of the entire universe. And you hear about it, you study about it, and intellectually you understand it. But when you see it, there is a different experience that you don't know it in your head, but you feel it in your core. And it's clear to all of us that we are certainly having an impact on what is it that we do to our home, to our host, and things are certainly changing. And it is hard not to make the analogy that sometimes you see in other systems in biology, And right here, you see, what is a normal cell, the two normal cells in the right. But there are some situations when there is growth and more growth and growth for growth's sakes. And let's never stop growing. And it doesn't matter, let's just keep growing. And it doesn't matter how much we take and never give back until we destroy our host. And that is known as cancer. And so it's hard not to see the analogy on these biological systems with these cancer cells really destroying their host and us. They basically doing the same thing to our host. And I think that answers the why. I'm passionate about this. But let me share a little bit more of the content itself about the air quality in particular, which is what I do in Los Angeles. And this is a picture of the Pasadena freeway. Look at that in the cars, which is one of the elements that produce all the emissions of nitrogen oxides and volatile organic compounds and whatnot that contribute to the smog problem. And then, all these things accumulate, and this is the picture of the inversion layer. Sometimes in the summertime when you are coming down in John Wayne or LAX, you might even see it's like a line that somebody drew in the sky, and below it's brownish, that's NO2, and above it's the sky. So you see all the smog and all the inversion layer that's created, and you say, oh, well, damn, good thing that you show all those old pictures, because that's not the case anymore. This is the 405 freeway during the Memorial Weekend getaway. Sometimes when I show this slide in international conference, they say, no, did you Photoshop that? I wish I had, but this is a real picture of. You can probably see Westwood. It's here on the right, and it's near the Getty, and so it's not every day. It's not every day, but this is our city. This is our freeways. This is how we live. These are our emissions, and the impact of all of that, skipping through all the physics and chemistry, it's felt in the air we breathe. So these are some summaries of the, in this case, it's the LA Times reporting some of the data in 23 to 2007, and we were listed as the worst, the most polluted Southern California in the country. And then you say, okay, well, no, things have changed because, we do a lot of things. And Forbes in 2008, 2010 put us in the Bakersfield and Visalia and Fresno and Los Angeles and whatnot, also in the bottom 5 of the most polluted cities, right next to the most miserable cities in America and the most toxic cities in America. So we have been consistently in the low. And if you look at more recent data, 2015, and let's say, let's look at it by ozone. The California, it's the worst if you look at it by ozone. Los Angeles, Visalia, Bakersfield. Oh, okay, no, let's look at it by particles because, that might be different. The same players shuffle a little bit. And you say, oh, let's look at it by, short-term pollution, the same player. So we are like that kid in high school, like me, who was chosen last when we were playing sports. But we're consistently chosen last. And, what is it about Los Angeles? And the answer is not that we pollute more than any other person. If anything, it's less, maybe. But given the meteorology and given the nice weather that we have, is that sort of catalyzes something that's called photolysis to create ozone. And given that the geographical area of where we live, and the mountains, St. Gabriel Mountains stopping. So all the geographical, meteorological, and weather and emissions and everything, it's almost the perfect recipe. And the same thing happens in Mexico City. They have the Valley of Mexico, which is surrounded by mountains, no mixing and whatnot. So all these dynamics and things like that, this is what I study. This is what I have devoted my entire academic career, my entire professional life, to try to understand. There are many aspects of this. There's the legal aspect, the social aspects, which are extremely important. Personally, I am interested in the fundamental physics and the fundamental chemistry of these phenomena. And the tool that I use to try to understand it, it's from a computational point of view. So it's very important to have theoretical, sometimes laboratory, sometimes measurements, and as well, we'll talk a little bit about that. But from the angle that I come from, it's basically a computational approach to air quality. I'm extremely passionate about computing. Many of my undergrad friends, they are very passionate about fast cars, and I like them, but I'm more passionate about fast computers, and so I try to bring that feeling and that knowledge to my research and have fun with it, playing with the fastest toys around. So this is a wonderful picture that summarizes the type of research that I do in the environment. It has the city of Los Angeles in the 1950s, and it shows in a single slide the impact of air pollution on that woman who was crossing the street. She's probably drying a tear, and she's not crying. I believe that would be something called peroxyl acetyl nitrate, which is a lacrimogen that was affected high concentrations in the 1950s. And you see low visibility, a product of air pollution. You see the issue of transportation and electricity, some items that contribute to air pollution. You see human health. So, and you see Los Angeles, and you see our history. So I love that picture. But so to try to understand all those systems and to try to see, optimize what is the next step that we have to do, we have done a lot of research, and we are still doing that. We are asking the question: it's hydrogen going to be important? Or electricity, electric cars. Will that make a difference? How much would it cost? How much would it make a difference? All these are really important questions that we are answering nowadays. So, and these are the different approaches. The first approach is to have a satellite, and this is the work that Tracy does. And satellite studies are really wonderful because you cannot argue with them. There is an ozone hole. How do you know? Because I took a picture and see the hole there, there's the hole. So you cannot argue with that. The earth is round. Look, here is the picture. And some people still, might have issues that the earth was round. And that's happened in the history of science. And that happens in other areas. But that gives you the snapshot of the real atmosphere, and it's hard. It's really hard to argue against that. But what you get is what you get. If you say, "Hey, what would happen if we increase the temperature a little bit?" Well, you can't. So that's why you have laboratory studies, and we have many of those, several of them right here in UC Irvine, which are chambers that are built to be able to manipulate and ask these questions. What happens if you increase the temperature? What happens if you increase the relative humidity of this? And, is there more pollution? Is there less pollution? And whatnot. And these are wonderful ways to complement and supplement and how to understand the dynamics of air quality. But the problem is that some of the instruments are not sensitive enough to go to the low level of that are present in the atmosphere. So they say, well, that might not be the real atmosphere. And that is why we have computational approach. And that is, you create a virtual world with the fundamental physics and the fundamental chemistry and the fundamental fluid dynamic. And then once you have the right answers for the right questions and the right reason, then you can begin to ask some questions that you could not do the experiments, like the one we were talking about. What happens if everybody in Los Angeles drove an electric car? That's a good question. What happens if everybody drove a hydrogen car? These things are not cheap. So, you better have a good idea of these things. Or if we go and source energy from different biorenewable, biomass, biogas, all these are important questions that are answered in a virtual world that you cannot do experiments as easily as before. And that has been, part of the UCI experience. This is me in the late 90s, coming to UCI, working with Professor Herbert Hamber, and we had two different goals. His interest was in cosmology and the origin of the universe, and he told me that the universe is in 9 dimensions. Which I don't understand, but my question was about air pollution. So we needed all the computational power we could get, and we decided to go for off-the-shelf components that we got in fries, and those fries were from Home Depot, and so off-the-shelf components to build sort of a homemade parallel supercomputer to be able to answer those types of questions. Because, my friends, there is no app for air quality. So you require a parallel supercomputer to do those things. And this is, one of the things that I'm very passionate about, and since then it's been upgraded constantly. And, the last upgrade was more recently, a couple of years, 3 years ago now, and to have really powerful CPUs with a single board handling 48 units and a lot of memory and whatnot. And still sometimes that's not enough. But one of the beauties of being in academia is that you get a chance to go to other places. And I take sabbaticals to go to Europe from time to time to some of the supercomputer centers in Europe, in particular in Barcelona. And this one is inside a Romanesque church that has been deconsecrated. It's not a holy place. To some of us, it's still a holy place. and the contrast between the bleeding edge of computational science and the architectural Romanesque architecture that you see, it's just fascinating. I really feel, it's like such a pleasure and a privilege to be able to play with those toys. And they have this performance of petaflops. You probably heard about gigaflops and how many gigahertz is your computer. So orders of magnitude more, it's the teraflop. In the teraflop, without getting technical, this is the performance that we're getting when you say, okay, Mare Nostrum, that's the name of the computer, please count all the stars in the universe. Return. 1.5 seconds later, it's telling you, I'm done. That's at the teraflop. This is 10 times faster. 20 times faster in the petaflop. It's unbelievable, the amount of analysis that it's done here and the amount of data science that we can do and applicable to earth science, to pharmaceuticals, to our own behavior. It's just breathtaking what you can do computational with that. So I like to share those things with some of my undergrads, and I teach MA 10, of course, and I see some MA 10 students sitting right here. Thank you for coming, guys. Ex-MA 10 students, and we have, try to share some of the excitement that comes from this way to do research and do science with them. But I also take that as a teaching opportunity to highlight the importance of research, of diversity in research and in science and in STEMs. And in particular, I remind them how women have been the founding mothers of software tools. And I bring the pictures of count Ada Lovelace, who was working with Charles Babbage to develop the first computer language. And I remind them that the men were fighting the war, so the brains that stay here to program machines like the ENIAC and the UNIVAC and whatnot were women. And the term debugging, it came from all these great pioneers like Grace Hopper that invented a compiler tool, debuggers, all these tools that software people use day in and day out. It's their bread and butter. These were developed by women. And in addition to that, you have really at the top of the game of academia and business world, some members of the LGBT community, such like Alan Turing, who is the father of artificial intelligence. He was the one who broke the Nazi codes of the Enigma machine that was fundamental in winning the Second World War. And Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, the biggest company in the history of the universe, and heading that kind of thing. And this question that Alan presented, it was this is actually the original paper that he presented. It's one of the life-changing papers that was published in a journal called Psychology and Philosophy. And the paper starts with, I propose to consider the questions, can machines think? People, it gets better than that, by the line. And those were, some of his impact. So anyway, I have share some of the other interests that are here, but in the last 2 minutes, I want to leave, something of what can everybody do for this kind of things, because there are people who study the fundamental of air quality and whatnot, and there are natural and anthropogenic sources that affect climate, cloud dynamics, air quality in ways that we're still trying to understand. But what's the take-home message? What can I do to take that future in my own hands? So there are four very quick, takeaways from that. Number one, be like a celebrity master chef and recycle. That a single building of 7,000 people, it's like removing 400 cars off the road. And not only recycle, the paper and whatnot, which UCI does a fantastic job. And I have great discussions with Kim about these topics and how we can improve that, but also recycle some of the clothes and whatnot. I did that over the break. Decluttering the house feels great. I could not begin to tell you how important that is. Or number two, be like a former U.S. president. So this is not the president, Bill Clinton. This is the ex-service, civil service, Bill Clinton, which as his foundation, he changed 140,000 of the light bulbs in Los Angeles to basically to have LEDs. And I did that in my house. And let me tell you, the bill cost that I sent, the check that I sent to Edison was significantly cheaper after that. And you are helping remove so many of the greenhouse gas emissions. Or be like Albert Einstein and bike to work, which I still practice what I preach, and needless to say, the savings that you will have in gym memberships or in UCI parking fees, or in or just to feel good about that. And what's something that we can all do if you believe that this is important. It's simple: vote. I want to conclude by saying, are these things making a difference? Yes, they are. There are. If you look at the history in the x-axis here, and here is the level of pollution over the last 30, 40, 50 years, we have done tremendous improvements in air quality because of different policies. We have the air quality standard here, so we are way above the standard, but we are moving in the right direction. We're moving certainly in the right direction. So that's why it's important for you to see and for you to know that, yes, we're not there. We have a lot of work to do, but all these efforts are getting us to a place where, we're moving from that every single day to maybe not every day, but from time to time, you have a clear day in Los Angeles and in other places in the country. So with that in mind, I have to summarize all the things that are important to me. I have to mention some of them that I was not able to talk about because of constraints that have to do with energy, electric, hydrogen, solar, and whatnot. And I have to be completely honest also on some other things that are important to me that are not academics, and that will be food and wine, fountain pens, and personal finance. So thank you so much for the opportunity to share this. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
As you can see, Donald has a passion for saving our world and for pollution and minimizing as much pollution as possible. Does anybody have any questions for Donald? Is there a mic that you can pass down?
Thank you very much. Is this on?
I think so.
Yeah. Very interesting. So I grew up in LA and experienced the LA smog for all of my life, and now moved down to Orange County. So I was wondering, the history of LA, the geography of LA, the number of cars on the street for the number of years that LA's been around causes this bad situation with air pollution. And Orange County's newer, even though there's some older sections, but the whole county's growth has happened very recently, comparatively. So I'm wondering if you can give us a little idea about how the levels of air quality in Orange County contrast with LA, and whether some of the LA pollution spills over. I see that LA's Long Beach and so on. So
yeah, no, that's a great question. That's a fantastic question. And I can, the short answer is we're doing much better in Orange County than in Los Angeles. And when I give the talk for the technical talk for prospective students, I tell them, this is UCLA. Look at the levels of ozone. This is UCI. Look at the levels of ozone. It's completely different. We have a much better air quality in Orange County, given that, the wind patterns that come from the Pacific Ocean sort of clean the Orange County area fairly quickly. The counties that have a problem in air quality, it's Los Angeles and Riverside. Big problem, twofold, because you have the San Gabriel Mountains stopping the flow, and there is a lot of emissions related to agriculture, and that creates some of the precursors for particle formations, ammonium nitrates, ammonium sulfates, and whatnot, that really put that place in one of the worst. Irvine, it's and our surrounding, we have a clean air. Literally, we're not even close to that. Thank you for clarifying that, because it's not everywhere all the time. It's some specific geographical areas. Yeah.
Okay, question in the back. Can give a. Remember the air quality when you're doing yield activities for the next year's UCI class.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you. My name is Victor Sanchez. I'm in Admissions Transfer Outreach here at UCI. Thank you very much. Out of curiosity, there's obviously a positive correlation between the number of cars and the emissions going up, which is obviously when we have more electrical cars, more hydrogen cars, our emissions will possibly go down. Assuming that we as consumers don't purchase more electrical cars, and assuming that we continue to increase in population in California, as we have over the next last say 20, 30 years, as we move forward into 30, 40 years from now, do you think that at some point California will need to adapt to a different transportation system to stay in touch with the admissions? Will that become a necessity at some point?
Yeah, very good question. Thank you. Excellent question. And if we look at some of these, like you correctly mentioned, the number of people have increased. The number of miles of vehicle traveled have increased. The number of economy measured by the gross state product or whatnot, it has increased. So you see some of the things that are important to society, and history has shown that we can have that growth in economics. We can have that growth in number of vehicles, and we can have that growth, but using technology to clean some of the fundamental chemistry that's used to drive all these things. So if I have to give my opinion to the second part of your question, what happens, looking towards the future? Well, I think that, Los Angeles is already trying to push towards a more different alternative ways of transportation, not only public transportation, but also the different sources of energy that might renewables in particular, it's a big one, that are going to be driving some of these things, so that vehicles and population growth can be still mitigated, and we can continue going on the downslope. So I feel optimistic. I think that there is a lot of room for growth. Historically, in the 1940s, we did exactly the opposite, and we dismantled the whole wonderful transportation system that existed in Los Angeles in order to have the combustion technology grow. But we are already taking steps to reverse that. Thank you.
I was just wondering how you got from Nicaragua to Lehigh. If you could fill in some of the details. Was your family wealthy enough to send you, or, I mean, there was sort of a gap there.
Yes. There is. And what happens is that in Nicaragua, in the late 70s, there was a civil war, and that was the Sandinistas and Somoza civil war. And at that time, when the Sandinistas won, Daniel Ortega, who is still the president, today, but he, the previous one was a dictator. He doesn't call himself a dictator, but he has not left power. Even today, he's the president. And so everybody was, all happy to be there and whatnot. But very, very, very quickly, things started to become unstable, and that was the Iran-Contra affair that you probably remember. So there was a fight to have the Contra-Revolucionarios and go take back the power. And that means that if you were a male between the age of 13 and 45, you have to go fight. And that was not without training and fighting for something that you believe or not. It doesn't matter. You have to go. So a lot of the Nicaraguan population who could get out, they did. Most of the immigration was to Miami and to Costa Rica. I went to the Costa Rican part, and and Costa Rica not being my country, I was like, okay, that's the case, and so I came to the United States. By that time, I was of the age that I needed to go to college. So the short answer for that, it's due to that civil war. If I may say a corollary, that puts me in a very interesting psychological place, because Lehigh, it's a private school, but as an international student, for me, it was not make any difference. In tuition, it's pretty high. But that means that some of my classmates, they have a different perspective. They had the perspective that, I will work in Dad's office as soon as I graduate and whatnot. I had come from a different perspective. I had come from a perspective that the things that belonged to my dad did not belong to him anymore. I was a witness that my dad had to sell the house the day that we were leaving, because we were not trying to publicize that. And I didn't know until the day that my dad said, "Pack your bags, we're leaving tomorrow." And when we were going to the airport in the taxi, some neighbor came and said, "Hey, Donald, I hear that you're leaving. Can I buy your house? My dad was, what? It's not a pallet, but it was a big house, 5 rooms, And he said, how much is the offer? $5,000. And my dad sold the house right then and there. I still go back and see the place where I grew up. It really hurts. And but that put me in a different mentality. So when I came to Lehigh, I was like, okay, there are things that nobody can take away from you, the things that you have in your head. And that really put a different perspective than the average undergrad Lehigh student of 1990.
Hi, I noticed that you were interested, I'm in the middle here. I noticed you're interested in both electric vehicles as well as hydrogen fuel. From a vehicular perspective, it seems there's a bit of a battle of the technologies. So ultimately, which technology do you think will prevail? Which one should prevail? And which one is better for the environment?
That's a great question. That's a fantastic question. And I have to be completely honest with you, the jury is still out in which is the technology that will prevail. I wish I knew, but part of all the efforts that we have and working with some of our colleagues at APEP, at the Advanced Power and Energy Program here at UCI, it's trying to answer that. But not all the pieces are here. But we can have a very interesting observation related to the second part of the question about what the impact of that is for the environment. And sometimes, the question is, well, it's hydrogen. Obviously, that's better for the environment because the way that you combust hydrogen is to put it with oxygen and it creates water. We're done. There's nothing less harmful than water. And you are right. But the problem is not that. The problem is not what happens to the hydrogen after it's combusted. The problem is where does the hydrogen comes from? That's the problem. And it can come from electrolysis, which is coming from solar energy. That's one source. But that's not where hydrogen is made. It's made from methane reformation. And you have to, one of the ways to generate hydrogen is to burn coal, to do all that. And so there is hydrogen and there is hydrogen. So that's a subtle thing that sometimes we forget. And the same thing with electric cars. There is electricity that's generated by burning dirty coal in one extreme, and there is electricity generated by wind energy or solar energy. So the spectrum, it's not so much of what is the technology, but what is the source of the fuel. Very insightful question. Thank you for asking that one. Thank you so much. I appreciate